couple of things we're going to get into tonight before we hit our main topic. Our main topic tonight, which I'll just kind of give a little teaser. Top 5 wide receivers in the NFL. So I've got my rank for the top 5 wide receivers. Going to be a fun little breakdown. Show you guys where I'm putting them at. Some stats behind it if you're not looking into that kind of stuff. But it's actually pretty in depth and pretty interesting for a lot of those guys. But a couple updates I'm going to get into. Today was the NFL trade deadline, if you were unaware. And so a couple of things. I know Will Fuller was a big talk about potentially being traded out of the Texans. And they ended up not trading him. They kind of put their foot down. Green Bay was really making a hard charge to go after him. And they ended up they couldn't make a deal from what I was reading. I think it was Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport tweeted out. They couldn't get a deal done. They couldn't decide on the value. And it basically they just couldn't come to terms on it, and so Will Fuller's going to stay a Texan for the rest of the year. And you know, who knows? Maybe they'll work a deal to move him to Green Bay after the season. Who knows? Maybe he'll end up hurt, and they could cut him because he has had some injury problems in the past. So who knows what's going to happen? But some deals that did get done. Now I'm only going to cover the last few days. I'm not really going to get into, 2 weeks ago. So these are pretty much just like since Friday-ish. Number one, we saw a trade between the 49ers and the Saints, where the Saints sent linebacker Quan Alexander over. The 49ers sent Quan Alexander over to the Saints, and the Saints sent linebacker Kiko Alonso over to the 49ers. Kind of just a linebacker swap. Kiko Alonso really didn't fit in the Saints scheme that well, so and he hadn't been that productive, so they're sending him over to 49ers, and maybe he can get a resurgence to his career, because he actually was doing very well to start his career up in Buffalo. So then he went to the Miami Dolphins, and it didn't really pan out for him there, and then he ended up bounced around a little bit, and then he ends up with the Saints. Couldn't figure out how to use him, so maybe they'll use him better in San Francisco. Quan Alexander, former Tampa Bay Buck, ends up back in the NFC South. Maybe he'll get a chance to take out some frustration on the Bucks. Who knows? But could be a good trade, definitely. Not sure if you heard, but they want to start the basketball season end of December or middle of January. Yeah, I heard they'd been talking about it, the NBA Players Association and all that kind of stuff. Don't know if they've gotten any further in the talks on that yet, but I had heard that they were working on that. They were aiming for right before Christmas, but it doesn't sound like before Christmas is going to happen from what I was just reading. I think it was yesterday. It still could, but it's sounding more and more like it's probably going to be like a January 1st, right after January 1st start for them. Hey, what's going on, Taylor? Okay, so over to our trade deadline moves. Let's see here. We've got another move. The Dolphins actually started to get kind of active today, and they sent wide receiver Isaiah Ford over to the Patriots, which kind of weird to see an inter-division trade happen at the trade deadline. You see that kind of stuff in the offseason occasionally, but mid-season, right before the trade deadline, Dolphins send a wide receiver who really hasn't done much for him over the last 3 years, Isaiah Ford, over to the Patriots. Apparently Bill Belichick really liked Isaiah Ford, and Bill Belichick's claiming that they don't have much for a salary cap right now. If you guys didn't see his little comment about how they're doing this year, if you don't believe that Bill Belichick's capable of tanking, I think he's doing it this year. He's just doing it in a very under-the-radar type of fashion. And it's working. So, and he's taking he's taken a little bit of criticism for this year, and rightfully so. Obviously, they suck. They're 2-5. But he definitely skirted around in his talkings today, today or yesterday with how they were doing this year, saying they were cap strapped and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, going into next year, they have the most cap space in the NFL. So it's but that's Bill Belichick for you. Hey, can't fault the guy. On top of that, then the Dolphins also then traded to get a running back, because they definitely need running back help. They've had some injuries this year. They ended up making a trade with the Chiefs to get DeAndre Washington, who is a former Raider. DeAndre Washington kind of got put on the back burner during the Marshawn Lynch resurgence, we'll call it, after he got drafted, and then Jalen Richard, and then Marshawn Lynch, and kind of hurt DeAndre Washington's value a little bit. He got let go, and he ended up with the Chiefs, obviously division rival, and the Chiefs were like, you know what? We just got Le'Veon Bell. We're good. See ya. So they shipped him off to the Dolphins. Now, I like DeAndre Washington. I think he's very talented, and he kind of got a raw deal in Oakland. So hopefully he can make a bounce back the rest of the season. And the Dolphins all of a sudden are looking competitive. They're not doing bad at all. I want to say they are. Let's see. Dolphins are sitting at what, 4-4, 4-3 right now. So they're sitting in second place in the AFC East, which is shocking how they started the season. You kind of thought that they were going to be the jumbled mess of the AFC, and they're second in the AFC East, and so it's a little shocking. And now Tua's starting, and I made the comment, during the game, did Tua, help with a inspiration to the team? Because all of a sudden the defense was playing hard, and the special teams was going at it, and the offense really didn't have to do anything. They won. They not only won, they handed it to them, and Tua only threw for 93 yards. I mean, the offense didn't really have to do much, and it was a blowout. So it's kind of interesting to see how, everybody was so behind Ryan Fitzpatrick and how emotional he was, and he was a great leader and all this kind of stuff. I never saw that team play like they did this past weekend with Tua at quarterback when Ryan Fitzpatrick was quarterback. Not once did I see the defense ball out like that. Not once did I see the special teams ball out like that. They were playing like a team on a mission. Message received. They could end up being a contender yet this year. Now, granted, the AFC is pretty tough. I mean, when you look at, you've still got to get by the Chiefs. You still got to get by your own division, Bills. You still got the Titans. The Colts are playing well. And then you've got the AFC North teams, which, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and the Browns. The Browns, I mean, they still have a winning record. They're 5-3, which for a Browns fan has got to be like, oh my God, yes, we're competitive. But there's a lot of teams for the Miami to get by, but they could do it, especially if they can end up taking down the Bills. They're only one game behind the Bills. They beat the Bills, they could move into first place. So they could end up division winner just because of beating the Bills, and the Bills haven't looked that fantastic lately. Their defense has looked like really bad this season, especially with how good they were the last 2 years. And then they've struggled on offense, moving the ball quite a few times. Now Stephon Diggs has been a huge piece with getting the ball movement, but it's been ugly at times. They've struggled to put points on the board. They've struggled to get first downs. They've struggled to just move the ball, period. So it'll be interesting to see if Miami can actually take a run at this, and if they can rally behind Tua and Tua takes it to them. I think DeAndre Washington could be a big piece to that if they can get the running game going. On top of that, we also have the Jets sent defensive end Jordan Willis to the Niners. Niners are... they're hurting. If you haven't seen it, Jimmy G ended up on IR again, and so did George Kittle. They're both going to miss the rest of the season. Sounds like Jimmy G is going to be out. Kittle thinks he's going to make it back, but IR is 8 weeks. Excuse me. IR is 8 weeks, so Kittle could make it back for the last game of the season, but is that going to even matter? Or are they even going to make the playoffs at that point? They still, they're really the fourth. They have a winning record, but they're the fourth team in the NFC West. So I don't know if they're even going to have a chance to get into the playoffs, and if bringing Kittle back after IR is even going to make any sense for him. But right now, literally the 49ers are going to have to start signing guys off the street and making low-key trades like this for Jordan Willis, because they don't have anybody to put on the damn field. I want to say I actually think they have more injuries to their team than the Eagles do at this point. And now, granted, it hasn't been to their offensive line, but it's been their defense has been just obliterated by injuries. Their wide receivers have gotten hit. Obviously, their quarterbacks. So, 49ers are in trouble anyways. Yep, Cowboys and Steelers this week. It's gonna be. That's kind of why I, you know, had to wear my Ryan Shazier jersey just to throw this on, and I didn't want to rub it in anybody's face, but and I'm a firm believer in same type of mantras like Kobe Bryant. Job's not done, so I want to see them play and win out. My fear has always been with the Steelers is they end up seceding to lower teams and giving up those gimme games. So hopefully this isn't a trap game like what I think it might be. But this year they've at least been getting the job done. They've been closing out games. They've been winning the games that they're supposed to win, which is what you're supposed to do as a good team. Exactly, Dave. That's what I was just saying. They've got to win this game. They have to win this game. Speaking of the Cowboys sent defensive end Everson Griffin over to the Lions. Cowboys are basically, hey, this season, see ya, clearing out Everson Griffin. I don't really know what the move was there, if they had an issue with him or what the deal was. He didn't seem to get that much playing time to begin with. I don't know if it's that he couldn't get onto their defensive scheme or what it was. They just signed him off the Vikings, or from the Vikings this past offseason anyway, so Everson Griffin ends up with the Lions. Lions look like they're retooling because they're trying to get a few players. Seahawks sent center B.J. Finney over to the Bengals in a trade where the Seahawks got Carlos Dunlap at defensive end. Now, last week, I'm going to bring this up. We had this conversation last week about pretenders and contenders. Now, you Seahawk fans are going to like this because this move right here, this move that I'm talking about right now, getting Carlos Dunlap, this is the move that puts them back into being a contender mode because they get Jamal Adams back this week. They get Griffin back this week. And now you add Carlos Dunlap to a pass rush. If they can generate a pass rush, this defense changes tremendously. Jamal Adams alone gives them that secondary help. Griffin has been okay. Jamal Adams helps big time. But you put Carlos Dunlap where Carlos Dunlap can get pressure on the quarterback, and this defense is going to change drastically. That could be the piece to give Seattle a deep playoff run, and it wouldn't shock me one bit if they end up the number one seed in the NFC because of that one move. Getting Jamal Adams back then, getting Griffin back at least as serviceable in the secondary, and then getting Carlos Dunlap from the Bengals. Massive move for the Seahawks. I was very, very, very behind that move. That was exactly what they needed. Oh man, comments are blowing up now. Snacks Harris, yep, he's back as well. So yeah, I think the Seahawks, like I said, that puts them into contender mode. Now we'll see how it all comes together this weekend, because injuries can happen, and I don't ever wish an injury on anybody. We'll see how Jamal Adams comes back from injury, and if he's if it's going to affect him, or if he has to take more time off. I think the Carlos Dunlap trade will definitely help them. Generate that pass rush, because Seattle was like what? They were last or second to the last. They were in the bottom three for pressure on quarterbacks. They only had one pressure on Kyler Murray last week. So definitely something where they needed to bring the momentum to get a pass rush so that they could actually get some defensive momentum. Otherwise, they were going to be hurting going into the playoffs. You can't be in the NFC West and not have a pass rush. You can't. You have to get pressure on the quarterbacks. You've got to play against Jared Goff. You've got to play against Kyler Murray. You had to play against Jimmy Garoppolo. Now you're going to play against Nick Mullins. But you've got to get pressure on those guys. because really the only one that's really escapable is Kyler Murray, and Seahawks know very well how a running quarterback, how a mobile quarterback moves, and when you've got a pass rush, how you can collapse the pocket as long as you have a good nose tackle or a good two-man front to be able to limit him stepping up into the pocket and taking off. You have to be able to close down from the exteriors as well, and if you can't do that, he's going to run around whoever you've got anyways. So getting Carlos Dunlap is, I think, is going to be game changer for Seattle's defense. Then we've also got another huge move that happened the other day, yesterday in the NFL. Chargers sent free safety Desmond King to the Titans after the Titans got absolutely thrashed by Joe Burrow, where they couldn't stop Burrow passing at all. That was their biggest point of need, free safety, and they just got a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro free safety and All-Pro return man in Desmond King. That was probably the dumbest thing I've seen the Chargers get rid of since not re-signing Drew Brees. I just blows me away that they let Desmond King go. Now, I get it. The Chargers are in rough shape right now. They're not going to win the division, but he's a key piece. He's a, third year? And he's a future piece to build around with that defense. I just cannot figure out why they would let him go. Now, unless it had something to do with cap space going into next year, I don't know what it is. Maybe some more will come out over the next few months. But letting Desmond King go, just can't figure it out. Boneheaded move, in my opinion. Titans got a steal in that, and that is going to help them with a playoff push. Then the other big acquisition was the Jets sending linebacker Avery Williamson over to the Steelers. Could be a good addition to the Steelers. He's a little more mobile than Robert Spillane, even though Spillane has really proven to be effective in that defense, filling in for the injured Devin Bush. So it'll be interesting to see how Avery Wilson adjusts to the Steelers, especially going from an 0-7 Jets team to a 7-0, or an 0-8 Jets team to an 7-0 Steelers team. It'll be, I don't know. I don't think it was necessary, especially, I think he was more meant for depth behind Spillane, because Spillane did get, he was pretty exhausted. He was gassed. He was all over the field, though, against Baltimore. So, could be a good pickup for him for depth. So, moving over to some other topics. Before I do that, again, I want to welcome you guys on. I see we got a bunch more viewers. So, covering tonight, one thing we're going to do, we've got Phoenix football that we're going to be breaking a little bit later after topics are done, and I'll be giving away some cards out of this fun product. I love Phoenix football. If you have a chance to go get Phoenix football for under $250 a box, highly recommend it. It's a fun rip. I don't want to give investment advice or anything like that. If you're talking about flip value for cards, I don't want to talk about that. If you're looking for a fun rip, this is what I call poor man's prism, poor man's optic. It's a fantastic product that has gotten better every year since it came out in 2016. I would highly recommend it to anybody that's looking for a, not foil, but a prism type of card with a lot of parallels, a lot of autographs, memorabilia, that kind of stuff. It's a fun product. If you can pick it up for $250 a box, that to me is undervalued. To me, I love the product. It's fun. And then the other thing we're doing tonight is we're going to do a mini helmet break, TriStar autograph mini helmets. So if anybody wants in on this throughout the live stream, we're doing these. $14 for a spot. We're doing 10 spots, randomized, one winner. $14 a spot, or 2 for $25. Limit of 2 spots to one person. We've only got a couple of spots left. So if anybody wants one, put it down on the message board that you want a spot. I'll post the PayPal up there. Please send it goods and services. We're going to fill that. We're going to 10 spot it. We're going to rip it open. One winner gets the autograph mini helmet. This product has Joe Burrow. It has Tua. It has Kyler Murray. It has Patrick Mahomes. It has Barry Sanders, Jim Kelly. It is a really cool product. All right, Dave, Fitch, and Taylor. Oops. Let me, okay. I'm going to type it in real quick. There you go. That is the PayPal to go to. Send $14 for one spot or $25 for two. I've only got 10 total spots. One for Taylor, one for Dave Fitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That leaves 2 spots. So if anybody else wants a spot, post it up there, and that's all that's left. So I'm going to put... Dave Fitch and Taylor. So like I said, if anybody else wants a spot, there's 2 left. 1, 2, make sure. Hold on. I'm going to double check this one. Yep, 2 left. So if anybody else wants one throughout the show, just let me know. We've got a few more, or those 2 spots left. Okay. Next topic I wanted to cover for this one. The Oakland Bipolars. I mean, the Oakland Raiders, I'm sorry. This is one for me that I don't want to say that I ever enjoy seeing the Raiders lose. I don't really enjoy any team being absolutely abysmal. And the Raiders have just been an anomaly to me for the last 5 years. When they drafted Derek Carr in 2014, I expected big things from the Raiders. Derek Carr, very highly coveted quarterback, very solid, very good quarterback coming out of college. They also drafted Khalil Mack in that draft, and things obviously didn't quite go, other than one season, how they wanted it to, and then they ended up, losing the first round of the playoffs. John Gruden and Mike Mayock come in and start roster shakeup, then the Antonio Brown fiasco last year, and they kind of were, again last year. Underwhelming. This year, they're 4-3, which isn't massive. It's not eye-popping. They're just above the mediocre line, but when you look at their play this year, let's take a few things into consideration. They lost 3 games. The Patriots, it's the Patriots. Early in the season, it's Bill Belichick's team. You're thinking the Patriots are going to be a 10-win team this year. Well, they're not. They're 2-5. But they lost to the Patriots. Then they lose to the division-leading Bills of the NFC East. Or AFC East, excuse me. And then they lose to Tom Brady's Bucks. Okay, those are the 3 losses. Okay, 2 of them, I get it. Patriots now is a head-scratcher. But then they beat the Chiefs. They beat the Browns. And they beat the Saints. 3 of their 4 wins are against winning teams. And not just winning teams. They handed the Chiefs their only loss. And then the Saints, they're one of 2 losses. So they've come out and balled against a couple of teams, and then got their ass handed to them by a couple of teams as well. This is what I was talking about, the bipolar. So out of their 3 losses, 2 of them, okay, I get it. Out of their 4 wins, you're looking at 3 of them going, what? How did you beat them? How did you beat the Chiefs? How did you beat the Browns? Well, I mean, it's the Browns, okay. It's Browns. How did you beat the Saints? But then you lost to the Patriots. I don't know. Bipolar Raiders. Now, moving on to Derek Carr. Derek Carr this season so far is putting up better numbers in his career than he's ever had. And he doesn't have a big-name wide receiver that he's throwing to. He has no big names at all. He is at 71.1% completion, which is higher than he's ever had in his career. He's thrown for 1,838 passing yards, which is on pace for more yards ever in his career. He's thrown 14 touchdowns, which is on pace to tie his career high. He's only thrown 2 interceptions, which he's on pace to have the lowest amount he's ever thrown in a season in his career. And he's got a 110.2 quarterback rating, which is the best in his career. He's only had one season ever where he's eclipsed a 100 quarterback rating, and that was last year, and he had like a 101 or a 100.1 or something like that. So Carr is a big piece of this as to why they're doing so well and why they're beating the good teams. Now, granted, yes, they lost to some, a head scratcher to the Patriots, but don't overlook the Raiders one bit. When they're playing these good teams, the Chiefs, the Browns, the Saints, and they still have to play the Chiefs again, they could end up sweeping the Chiefs this year. The Chiefs could finish the season 14-2 realistically, with those 2 losses being to the Raiders. And the Raiders could end up sneaking into the playoffs in a very deep AFC. And the Raiders could end up sneaking into the playoffs with a 10-6 record. It would not be hard for the Raiders to win 6 of their next 9 games. It really would not be hard. So be on the lookout for the Raiders, moving into that number 7 playoff position that we picked up that extra playoff position for the year. It wouldn't shock me one bit for the Raiders to be a sneaky team coming into the playoffs, taking down a team like, first round having to play Baltimore or having to play the Titans, and all of a sudden the Raiders are looking at, the second round of the playoffs against a Chiefs or a Steelers, or it's possible. So a couple of things that I was talking about on social media the last couple of days. Teams that should panic in the NFL this year that were successful teams last year. Hang on one second. Excuse me. I had to sneeze. Teams that should panic this year that were successful teams last year in the NFL. I put up a poll on Twitter over this, and I think it ended up being the Patriots were the number one voted team on this. Now, the 4 main teams that I would consider that need to panic in this are the Vikings, 2-5, after being playing for the NFC Championship game last year. The Patriots, obviously, 2-5. It's the Patriots. There's not much else to say. The 49ers being 4-4, and then the Eagles being 3-4-1. Now, I will put a couple of caveats with this, with the last 2 especially. 49ers and Eagles have been obliterated by injuries. We were talking about that a little bit ago. The Eagles are still winning their division, and they will be a playoff team. They probably will win their division. I wouldn't. I don't want to bet on it, but as the Eagles get healthy, they're going to get a little bit better, and they're going to beat the teams in their division because they are, even injured, they're the best team in their division. They are. I know that sucks for, Cowboys fans, Giants fans, Washington fans to hear that, but Carson Wentz is the best quarterback in the division. He doesn't always look like it at times, but he's held that team together and willed them to their 3 victories and their 1 tie. But the Eagles are going to win that division. They're going to host a playoff game with a losing record. Now, yes, they're 1 game away from being 500, but they've got some tough games coming up yet. They've already played the Steelers and the Ravens, so they got those out of the way. They already played the Browns, they got that out of the way. Or, the Bengals, they got that out of the way. And they played the Browns. I think they played all 4 of their AFC games. But they still have to play, I want to say they still have to play the Seahawks, and I believe they have to play, I want to say they have to play the Rams yet, too. But here, I'll actually check here real quick. Here we go, Eagles. Here, you know what? I'm gonna throw this up here. Make it a little bit easier so you guys can see what I'm looking at. Copy. I like doing this. This makes things so much easier when I can web page. Okay. Okay, so they come up with the Giants next. They still got to play the Browns. That's the one they got to play. But they got to play the Seahawks. They got to play the Packers. They've got to play the Saints. They got to play the Cardinals. And then they've got 2 weeks, at the end of the season playing the Cowboys and the Washington football team. So, I mean, like I said, you've easily got a losing record team that's going to win the division and host a playoff game. So it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see again another team host a playoff game with a losing record, and a lot of people are going to gripe about it because it's going to happen. Now the question is, are they going to be getting healthy to end the season to where they could win said playoff game? Shades of 2011 with, or no, 2012, 13 with, no, it had to have been 2011 because it was pre-Russell Wilson, I believe, with the Seattle Seahawks, where with the Beastquake game. Some of you Seahawks fans might remember the year better. It was 2011, 2012. It might have been Russell Wilson's rookie year. Either way, Seahawks went 7-9, hosted the New Orleans Saints in Seattle, and beat the Saints, who were favorites to be in the NFC Championship game. So, could we see reminisce of that sort of result? It's possible. Will the Eagles get healthy enough? Will their offensive line get healthy enough? Will their receiving core get healthy enough? It's possible. We won't know that for a couple of weeks yet, at least. But it's definitely something that to keep your eye on, because if we see another team with a losing record win a playoff game against a good team, it makes you really wonder how we're structuring the playoffs and if we really should be having division winners hosting playoff games, because the Eagles aren't going to go to the Super Bowl. There's no way in hell they're going to win a Super Bowl this year. They're too banged up. They don't have the talent depth for it. But they could win a playoff game and knock out a potential Super Bowl champion. So it's definitely, like I said, it's something to keep your eye on for that and watch as the season goes and see where the Eagles could end up playing spoiler to a couple of teams come the end of the season. Even though they're going to be a playoff team, they could still end up spoiling some people's hopes to make the playoffs for their own roster. Then the other one, as I mentioned, the Niners. Niners, same thing. They're going to be last in the division this year. Nick Mullins is going to be the starting quarterback. Unless he gets hurt, then they're going to have to move on again to a third-string quarterback. I don't see the 49ers making the playoffs this year. I wouldn't say there's panic mode involved with the 49ers this year, just for the fact that a lot of their stuff has been due to injury. They're coming off of coming off a Super Bowl loss. They've been brutalized this year in the injury department. And I know Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are not feeling overly stressed about this, or like they're in any kind of job security issues at all. They're making moves enough to keep themselves afloat at this point. And Kyle Shanahan, I don't care who you're a fan of, Kyle Shanahan's a damn good head coach. And so he's really keeping that team held together. The fact that they're 4-4 right now is actually a testament to how good of a coach he is. With that being said, one thing I will point out with the Patriots, for example, being 2-5, the Patriots had the most players in the NFL opt out of the season for COVID. and 3 of their guys were key starters, one of them being Patrick Chung on the defense, and then Donta Hightower as well. Those 2 guys alone are massive pieces for them, and then they had one of their all-pro linemen, offensive linemen, opt out as well. So I can't really fault Belichick for a 2-5 season, just because of you're not seeing the typical Patriots defense, and Bill Belichick is a defensive guy. So having 8 guys, 5 of them being defensive guys and several of them being starters, I don't see that being anything Belichick is like going, he's probably in his typical, yeah, we're going to play football. Yep, it is what it is. And that's fine, because he's the GM as well, so it's not like he's going to fire himself. So that leads me on to teams that are struggling this year. The majority of the teams that are struggling this year, if you look at the trend, it actually has to do with a correlation of, obviously, COVID and what struggles it presented for a team. A good portion of the teams that are struggling this year are teams that have a new head coach or a new quarterback. So when you look at it, Washington, Dallas, the New York Giants, Carolina, New England, Cincy, Denver, and the Chargers. 8 teams with below 500 records. Okay? 8 teams have either a new head coach or a new starting quarterback this year. And we're not talking about a backup because of an injury. We're talking about a new signed starting quarterback. With no legit preseason, or excuse me, with no legit off season, and with no preseason, none of these teams could get their stuff together. The advantage goes to the guys who've been around. Now, some might say, well, Indy is 4-2 or 5-2 or whatever they are, and Philip Rivers came from the Chargers. Yeah, that's fine. Philip Rivers has also been in the NFL for 17 fucking years. He doesn't care. He comes in. He understands an offense. He doesn't need to sit there and have his hand held. These other teams have guys who are new. These head coaches implementing a new offense. So it's a big difference getting a guy, and I think Indy was smart with bringing Philip Rivers in, drafting Jacob Eason. They still have Jacoby Brissett. Bringing Philip Rivers in, especially with the whole COVID issue, they've got a guy who will not panic. They've got a guy who can come in and take control of the offense himself. He doesn't need to spend 6 months working with his wide receivers. He doesn't need to spend 6 months with his offensive linemen. He's coming in going, this is how I want it done. Just do this. Feel me on this. You guys are professionals. Let's get the job done. And that's what they've been doing. So a couple other teams that have new head coaches and that have new starting quarterbacks that are doing well, again, they're guys who've been around the block. They're not implementing an entirely new offense with a rookie quarterback. Chargers have a rookie quarterback. Even with Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor was not the starting quarterback last year. Tyrod Taylor is a veteran quarterback, yes, but how do we know that Tyrod Taylor would have done any better than Justin Herbert? So I can't sit here and say that these teams here are necessarily at fault for any of that with lack of preparation, essentially. And I don't want to say it's on the head coach, because again, when you can't do stuff on the field like you traditionally would, because we're in an unprecedented time, and it is what it is at this point. Do you take this season and kind of write it off, kind of like how they did with the baseball season? We're like, wow, 60 games, we're going to put an asterisk next to it. I don't know. It's your call. Is anybody going to look back at the 2020 NFL season and go, well, I mean, they didn't have time to practice and get accustomed to each other, so we're going to put an asterisk next to the Super Bowl because, 6 of these teams that have losing records, they didn't get time to actually work anything out. No, we're probably not. We're not going to. Now, a lot of us are going to look back and go, COVID blew, man. This sucked. But it's not going to stop anybody from winning a Super Bowl and having a championship and being a good team and moving on in the future. Okay, rant over.